How's it going, everybody? I'm Ryan from Hellcat Design USA. I'm going to real quick show you the differences between the old PBR texture and the Principled BDSF texture that they just came out with in 2.79, and that they're going to continue obviously using. It's basically the same thing as the PBR texture, just it has everything in there instead of just what the PBR texture has. Generally, the PBR texture was set up so that you could just use for a general material. This Principled BDSF texture is more designed for everything. It's designed for everything from metal to normal materials. I'm sure some of you have seen Andrew Price and watched his tutorials on the PBR texture and seen how he set it up and put it together for you, or you've been to polygon.com, which is a great site, by the way. It's where I get all of my textures from. But anyway, we can start off by knowing that you guys have probably watched the old PBR textures from Polygon and that you have a basic understanding of what's going on when it comes down to it. Right now I'm in the node editor. And I've already unwrapped my block. Okay. Let's see. I'm not going to go into my rendered mode. I bought the 2080 Ti, not even thinking that it wasn't going to work for Blender right away. And it still doesn't work for Blender. It worked for one of the 2.8 versions that they came out with, one of the unstable builds. But it only worked for a little while, and then all of a sudden it stopped working. But so currently what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to set up the texture, and then I'm going to go and show you what the render looks like. Currently I'll show you what the render currently looks like right now with the current PBR texture as is. Grab my light and rotate it around so you can see. Oh, yep. Grab my light, rotate, bring it around. Okay, as you can see in the texture, as I rotate my light around, on the left of the screen there, that side, you can actually see it changing with the light because that's the way the shadowing is. The other two sides have light directly on there, so it's harder to see, but you can see there's, really good textures in here. So this is the general PBR texture that you worked with Polygon and Andrew Price, his setup, and I'm going to show you basically how to switch it over to the Principled BDSF shader, okay? So I'm going to exit out of rendered mode on that, click on my block again, so it's going to bring up this. Alright, now literally it's going to be set up the same when it comes to the materials. You're going to start off with your color, and you're going to have your normal, your gloss, or your reflection. Okay. And usually they also come with a displacement, but that's okay. We're going to not use the displacement. Any displacement textures will immediately go into the roughness. But basically what you're going to do is literally transfer your color over to your base color. Okay, your normal maps, and your normal map is going to go all the way down to your normal. Okay, so it's basically going to be set up the same. Your color, how your roughness is, you see how the gloss is going to the roughness. We're going to transfer that over to the roughness. Okay, all the things that are set up in your PBR shader. Okay, your color, your normal, your roughness, the reflection. Okay. All of that is going to be set up for inside of this shader. The only difference is you're basically going to set it up the same. So you have your reflection here. That is going to end up going into specular instead of reflection. Okay, but it'll literally create the same effect. It's the same shader. It's the same everything. Move that out and grab this and move this up. Okay, yeah, they're not the same exactly, but like I said, all of your node setup is going to go literally the same, okay, except we're going to change one thing over, okay. Instead of using the color, we're going to use the alpha for the images. No, I know that kind of sounds from the way you learned PBR nodes that you use the color and that's how it gets the images from it, but in this case the Principled BDSF actually uses the alpha for it. It's set up differently, but like I said, it runs literally the same. So we're gonna, instead of using the color, we're going to use the alpha. Okay, let's get rid of that color. Oh, that color's in the specular tint. Don't worry about these nodes currently. If you're doing a metal texture, obviously instead of being in the base color, you're going to be over in the metal texture, and everything else is going to be set up the same though. But like I said, everything is going to be set up the same for your color and your normal, but for your displacement images and your specular images, those are going to be going into the same outlets on here. Okay, the only difference is the reflection goes to the specular. Okay. Now there's other things you can play with these nodes. I actually haven't played with them yet, but you know, we can get into that a little bit later when I get into it. But basically that's the only difference. It's set up the exact same. You only transfer over the colors and the effect is literally the exact same. So if I go into my rendered mode again, even though I transferred shaders over, you're going to have, it's actually nicer because it sets it up more for real world colors, like how the real world soaks in images. If I set it up with the other PBR imager, you'll notice that there's darker areas, there's, you know, a lot more highs and lows in the actual image, and when you're rendering real world stuff, that's not how it really is. Actually, it soaks up a lot more light. So technically, this works better than the old PBR texture. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a great texture. I use this for the longest time, but ever since they came out with this texture, with the, you know, the Principled, it sets it up for the real world a lot better than the PBR, where you're going to have to actually tweak, you know, in the real world, your roughness. You're going to have to mess around with your reflection and your roughness to make it, you know, correct for whatever scene you're doing. This will automatically do it based off of what lighting is in the scene. Let me think. Anything else on this? I don't think so. Later on in tutorials, I'm going to start getting into how to build assets and stuff like that. This was just a basic overview of the PBR texture and how to switch it over. Like I said, we're going to go over real quick, and I'll show you again. You're just going to take the base color from the color, okay? And then everything, your normal is going to be the same. Your display or your roughness is going to be the same. And then your reflection is going to go into the specular here, okay? And then the other thing you're going to change is that the roughness and the specular are going to be using the alpha, okay, and not the color. You can use the color. It literally almost doesn't change too much, but I did notice a change in the renders when I'm doing larger renders with like close-up scenes of things. You can notice small differences in the texture of how the lighting hits it compared to stuff around you and shadowing and all that other stuff. So I generally prefer to use the alpha. But like I said, if you can see, it's got everything it needs for the bark image, okay? And it's set up literally the same as the PBR texture. So if you don't know how to set up this texture or what this is about, you can go to thepolygon.com and they'll explain everything. I'm sure Andrew Price is going to be doing updates on the Principled BDSF and other stuff. And you should definitely check him out. He's, you know, one of the top guys. And also check out CG Geek. Those guys will explain. They're amazing at explaining everything that you need to know. They don't go into depth or detail, super detail with things, and that's perfectly fine. A lot of what Blender is playing around with stuff and figuring it out for yourself, and that's kind of the fun part to it. But it's nice to have people that show you stuff. And so, like I said, if you really want to get into some good tutorials, I would suggest checking out CG Geek on YouTube. CG Geek on YouTube, and Andrew Price from Polygon.com or Blender Guru. I'll have links in the YouTube page that I post this to. All right, everybody. I'm off.